Shawn, what is up? How are you doing?
Bobby.T. Well, listen, I'm so excited to be here. And before we start, I just want to give you a shout out. I want everybody that's listening to this, wherever you are in the world, to rate, review, follow, subscribe. This man, if you're watching this, there's like 5 cameras. If you're listening to this, forget what you're doing. Get on YouTube or wherever you are. This is the setup.
Yep.
So I appreciate you having me here. I'm honored to be here.
No, respect and thank you so much. This is such an important conversation. I think, Shawn, we're going to discuss a few different things. We're going to discuss your book. I want to dive into sort of your backstory and what kind of brought you here. And more importantly, because a lot of the content and a lot of this information I'm hoping to do is help creators, help individuals who are sort of on the path as video creators, as bloggers, as individuals who just are looking to express themselves in today's world and market. How can they sort of level up what they're doing? And how can they use technology? How can they sort of take advantage in this time that we live in?
Totally.
And let's kick things off. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So Shawn Kanungo, I'm an innovation strategist, author. I spent 12 years at a company called Deloitte, really in the strategy, innovation side of things. Started my own company about 6-7 years ago, advising organizations, speaking on this topic of innovation disruption. And so many people know me as the disruption guy or the innovation guy. That's what people know me across Canada and around the world. And that's what I want to be known for the rest of my life. I'm obsessed with figuring out how I can help others create value and how businesses create value. So that's a little bit of myself. On the personal side too, I'm married. I got 3 kids, 6'4", and we got a newborn. And just loving being a father. Where just getting punched in the face every single day. Actually, literally getting punched in the face every single day. Because like before coming here, you're just like roughhousing with your kids.
Yeah.
I got this huge scratch on my nose. And then before coming on, I knew Bobby.T would have 5 different cameras. So I'm like, damn it, I gotta get some. I'm asking my wife, I need some foundation. I need some makeup. And then I'm like, you know what? Let's put these glasses on because that hopefully will mask the scratch. But yeah.
You can't notice it, Shawn. If you didn't say nothing, we'll not even see it. And to take a step back, Shawn, because the list of stuff that you do right now, being a digital strategist, an author, and just basically talking to companies about the digital world.
100%.
Taking a step back, when you were younger, when you were a teenager, when you were growing up, like what brought you to sort of where you are today? Like I'm kind of curious if there's some qualities or characteristics that you embodied as a young kid. Were you always curious? Did you always love technology? Were you a tinkerer of like figuring out stuff like that? Or when did this like need or passion come to fruition?
I think part of it is that growing up in a very traditional household, South Asian household, your parents always tell you to get a very traditional job, or they push you down this path of certainty or this path of mediocrity. And I always wanted to rebel against that. I don't know why. It was just inside of me. I did see my dad. He was entrepreneurial. He started his own sort of accounting firm. So I love that. I love aesthetics. I love design. Every time I'd have a project, I want to make sure that it looks good and feels good. And that's why I love chopping up with you, because if there's anybody in the world that understands aesthetics, it's you. Like I mean, look at where we are. I just fell in love with doing things differently. So growing up, whether it was a presentation, whether it was a project, I just wanted to do it differently. When I started work, that's how I approached every single day: is how can we do this better?
Yep.
And that's just inside of me, and I don't know if it's innate, but yeah.
It's so funny as you were just talking, Shawn. Like what that clicked so hard for me. Like when I was growing up as like a teenager, I just loved video games. I loved playing them. I was very competitive. And when that opportunity came for me to start to play competitively, everyone went against me. Everyone thought it was like so corny. It was a joke. I was like, no, I'm going to do this. I don't care. And so when I started building some momentum, when I started traveling, playing video games, when I started going internationally and I became an esports player, getting paid monthly to do this and travel to those tournaments, like it was fulfilling because it was the first time I realized I could have faith in myself and trust in myself that if the world says I'm crazy, maybe I'm onto something. Maybe there's something new. Maybe this is an indicator that's like the right direction to take.
Right.
And to dive deep into that sort of right direction, I was kind of curious because reading your book, loved it. And one of the things that like I found fascinating is you said that when it came to the projects you and your team were taking on, you would go the extra mile. You would, instead of just having a PowerPoint presentation, you'd create some digital videos, you incorporate and try to make it into a movie and experience. How, like, what was that trigger that made you want to separate yourself from your peers and kind of colleagues?
I think it's a great question. And, for me, it was, maybe it's growing up in Edmonton, growing up in an environment where, every single job that I've had, it's always been for like a global company. And, working for a company like Deloitte, it's a global company. In Toronto, the headquarters of Canada are in Toronto. Like Edmonton is just a side project for everyone. And I always was the underdog. I was always looked over. And so in order to be known, in order to have a voice, you had to do something differently. You could not play it safe.
Yep.
And so in order to develop a career that was meaningful and valuable, you had to step up. And that's why I believe that, in Edmonton, we create so many amazing entrepreneurs because they have to step up. They have to have that voice. And I think that was absolutely part of it. And because of that, I was able to build my brand within the firm, work across the globe in this innovation world. And it's only because I'm like, if I don't, like, I'm going to die here.
So I imagine one component, as I just touched upon, was your presentations. Like reading your book, you communicated that they're attractive, they're interesting, they're engaging. But I think that's just like one aspect. The other aspect, which I would love to know from you, was what was your presentations like in terms of the way you talk? Because when I see you present, I could just imagine what it was like when you presented to clients or within the like ecostructure of Deloitte. How did you develop that skill set of presentation or communicating sort of your ideas, thoughts, projects to others around the table?
So, there's obviously so many different elements of presentation and storytelling. And without like, we can go throughout the entire pod talking about this. But for me, it was the ability to present in front of different types of people in different environments, in a cold workshop boardroom, in a group of people that you've never met before. Just getting the cadence of running these workshops, doing interviews, being in these uncomfortable environments where you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing or why I'm here. And being put in those completely uncomfortable situations, you just develop the reps. Once you conquer that, you can do anything. I remember this clearly. I was doing this project for this big gaming and liquor company, and there were people on my team that were way more senior than me in that room, and yet they relied on me to do the entire the whole half day workshop or whatever it was, and because they weren't so in depth in that project. So it was just me in a room of 75, 100 leaders, just navigating this entire conversation at a very strategic level. And to me, it was like an orchestra. And I felt like, holy crap, what are these guys doing? I'm new to this game. I remember I was in consulting just for a couple of years. I'm like, wow, I can do this. And just stepping into those uncomfortable positions, just allowed me to grow and to become a better speaker. But also throughout the years, just being the presentation, the design, how you put up your slides, using humor. My friends and I, we created these creative films over the years. So humor was always a big piece of how I did my presentation. So to be honest with you, it's developing all these superhero skills around presentation design, a comedy, being in these uncomfortable situations, and then you put it all together, and now I'm one of the busiest speakers on the planet.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not just one thing. It's a whole bunch of things that gives me that unfair advantage.
Totally. And I dig it, Shawn, because watching you present, I mean, I wouldn't even classify it as a presentation. You're just telling stories.
Right.
And the stories are on par. And, you know, to kind of double click into sort of what you were saying, I'm kind of curious. So you're doing these great presentations. You're noticing that they're being effective. You notice you're being effective of communicating and delivering stuff. And was that the trajectory that allowed you to say, hey, maybe there's something more, and then break off into your own entrepreneur endeavor as a career? Or what was that deciding moment where you felt you were onto something, or that you felt it's time to move on?
Well, to be honest with you, the reason why I moved on was because, and it is the reason why I wrote that book, The Bold Ones.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we talk about it a lot, you know, just when we're chatting, and I know you're big on this around personal branding.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I wrote this book, The Bold Ones, is because I saw this power shift from institutions to individuals.
Okay.
I really believe that today the individual is the most powerful entity on the planet. That by creating content, by creating a brand, that you're actually creating your own superpower in a way.
Mm.
And at that time when I left, I don't think the firm knew what to do with me. How do we navigate with a superstar?
Mm-hmm.
In a sense, you know, there were like a couple different times where the client just wanted to work with me, right? And now you have like a bunch of partners being like, hey, why does our client want to work with a kid in Edmonton while we have 100 people down on the ground floor working on this thing? So I was getting into that, right?
Mm.
And that is the power of content. And I'm like, wait a minute. If I just bet on myself, to me, this is the most valuable asset in the world. Around this brand, this content. I'm actually building equity in myself. I'm building brand equity. And guess what? That is power. And so that's the reason why I saw this power shift to individuals. That's part of the reason why I left. And the keynotes were definitely part of that. But to me, it was not just the keynotes. It was the content coming out of the keynote. Because what I realized is that a piece of video, as you know, to me, that is the most scalable asset in the world. You create one thing, you can put it on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, wherever, and it can just go. What other asset in the world does that? To me, the ability to persuade, to convince other people using video, I know it's so stupid. We're talking about video, but people don't understand how impactful it can be. And to me, it was everything. And so, you know, I just saw the power of that. And actually taking video of me on stage, there's so much authority to that. I mean, I can go into the psychology of that, but yeah. But I want to ask you, because I know you are, you know, huge into this, you know, creator economy, personal brand. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you believe that it's everything too.
It's absolutely everything. And so my first taste around this was when I was about 20 years old. Again, playing video games, especially traveling the world. And it was the first time that there were video game players that were just individuals, randoms, who created $100,000 companies, multi-million-dollar brands and companies off selling like mouse pads.
Yeah.
Because they were scratching their own itch, but more importantly, as players, as thought leaders within the gaming industry, they had huge cult-like followings. And so seeing and watching that for the first time, seeing collaborations where there was certain big brands like Intel Canada or motherboard brand, not to nerd out a little bit, called Asus, there was groups who started collaborating with gamers because gamers were building audience. Seeing that, I started saying, that's fascinating. And why? And so learning about that, unpacking and seeing sort of those correlations in a time where, as I talk about esports, people are like, yeah, well, duh. It's like, no. This was when it did not exist.
Yeah, and you got that. That's why people thought you were crazy, because you were getting into this space when that ecosystem wasn't even ripe yet.
It wasn't even called esports.
Yeah.
There was no title for it. It was just a bunch of, it was the cliche, like there's a bunch of nerds who are in their basements, with no lights, no nothing, playing video games. And in that, seeing the culture grow, seeing these individuals pop up, I started to see like, okay, cool. There's a way to build audiences. There's a way to build your brand. And more importantly, because of technology and the speed, things are getting cheaper. It's like, how could you not perform? Like, to do this years ago would cost tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment and stuff that we would need. But now, like, it's expensive still, but it's so much affordable. You could do it from your smartphone.
100%.
And because technology is still moving so quickly, to not build a personal brand, it begs the question, well, what are you trying to do? Because when you see personal brand, especially today, people think that, okay, it's about entrepreneurs, small business, people on their own stuff. But like, if you're even in a small, like in a business, a corporate ladder, building your own personal brand will help you to build relationships with the higher ups, to build relationships with your customers, your colleagues, those individuals. Like, that equity is vital, because as you might take on a new position, a new job, it's everything. And so I've been preaching to people about the importance of personal brand. I've been investing in my personal brand, exploring it. And the one thing that's always the kind of chicken and egg scenario is like, well, it's like the psychology around it. It's the tech behind it, but then ultimately it's just down to you. Can you just, get what you're looking for?
And I think people, they make it very complicated. It's like, well, I'm not good on video. I'm not an extrovert. Like, it's about getting your ideas out there in any format. It could be a text message.
Yep.
It could be a WhatsApp thread. It could be a Slack room. It could be a newsletter. It could be audio.
Yep.
It could be it could be anything to share your ideas. That's how you start to create your own power. And if you just look at how the world is going, and I've been tweeting this out for every single year, and I say I've been casually retweeting this every single year, that the power is shifting to individual, and I keep showing everybody the use case, the examples, like the creator economy. You looked at this. I don't know when this is going to drop, but like Messi just signed with Inter Miami. He literally is a one-person, $1 billion a man because of that. He is the content. He is the equity. That's why Apple and Adidas are giving him a rev share because of him, right? Because of the individual. And so for me, many people think that I'm in the keynote business, that I'm in the speaking business. I am not in the speaking business. I am in the content business. And the thing is that what content gives you, it not only gives you, direct. You not only can financialize through the keynotes.
I'm going to prop this up because we're going to dive deep into this now.
Not only can you financialize or monetize through what I'm doing, which through the talks, but you can get brand deals. You can get equity in other businesses because of this.
Yep.
It's
like a mechanism, and it's like a tool.
So I am so passionate about just the ability to create power through this new method. And I think it's the most exciting thing in the world. And I could talk about it for years.
So this has been a belief from you. It sounds like a belief of yours for a while.
Yes.
And so talk to us a little about the process of how you brought all of those ideas contextual to the Bold Ones, the book.
Yeah.
And give us a little bit of details and the snippets, because like everyone grab this book. It is a dope read. It's refreshing. It goes into great tactical details that you can implement. I have already nailed down. So what I did, I read your book. I mapped out all of the call to actions that you had, and I have my to-do list of where I'm just going through each one, click them off the button. And some I have accomplished, many I haven't, and some just going one by one. And I love the tactics that you implemented in here for us to actually execute on in order to achieve some of the results that we all have. And so talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay, I'm just going to clip that. Hey, can you just get the 5 cameras? I'm going to clip that up. I'm going to send it and put some Instagram ads on that and let it cook. No, I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for having the book. Honestly, it is such an honor and such a privilege to hear that you went through it, that you took notes. And as somebody that put the blood, sweat, and tears in putting this thing together, that means a lot. So I appreciate it. And how it all kind of came together was, obviously I've been doing these keynotes for, I would say six years-ish, just being on the circuit, I would say 6-7 years. And, really being on the circuit and just collecting all these stories, over the years, but also doing it in a way that is a little bit more drawn out. The stories are a little bit more drawn out. And honestly, like during the pandemic, just like I was just diving deep into these stories, like going down the rabbit hole on some of the bold ones throughout history, from Xing Shi, like this Chinese pirate from back in the day, to Sam the Banana Man, to like Egyptian pharaohs like Hatshepsut. Like I wanted to not only I didn't want this to just be like a modern sort of take, and I do have like Drake and Yeezy and all that stuff in there, but I wanted to also go back in history and what made the bold ones bold.
Totally.
And so to me, this is a pure reflection of me. And it's interesting because this is not what you see in my keynotes, because I'm presenting to a corporate audience, and it's a very different format from this. This is me. This is hip hop. It's culture. It's history. It's my mind downloaded here. And so if you read this book, it is a direct reflection of my interest and my passions. And to put it together so that people can read my mind, it is the coolest thing in the world. I can't tell you.
No, that's wicked to hear. And each story I thought was so relevant, and how they kind of tied into everything. And one of the things, it's interesting because you started touching upon it. One of like the points and items that you said is one of your strategies, which I nailed down, I took as a nugget, is that you use pop culture relevance to kind of communicate, to bring that humor, to entertain, and also educate people. So when you were doing your research and doing some of your almost deep dives on some of the past people, like what was that process like? And were you finding, was there more people who didn't make the cut, who could have made the cut for this book?
Oh my God, there's so many, because I'm just a nerd, and I'm so obsessed with pop culture and history. There's so many people that didn't make the cut. To be honest with you, some were very controversial.
Okay.
We had Vladimir Putin and his backstory, and keep in mind this book was essentially written over a number of years. It was due to my publisher in April of 2022. So that's when it was due. It was mostly written at the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022.
Okay.
So that Russia Ukraine thing didn't start at the beginning of 2022. So obviously my publisher's like, okay, like we gotta cut this, the Putin thing. But the Putin thing, amazing, interesting story. You can say what you will about the guy. But he's got a really fascinating upbringing. I had just some other modern folks, like had Jake Paul in there.
Okay.
I think we had Arnold in there. We had a whole bunch of people lined up for that book, and it just there was just so much that we couldn't fit everybody in there.
Totally.
But yeah, I'm just fascinated with folks, and going back to the idea of newsjacking. Oh, that's what I call it, is newsjacking. I'd love doing that more than anything else, which is taking a story that just happened the day of or the night before, and including that within my keynotes or my presentations, and then putting that up online. Oh my God, like I love that, because to me that is the closest thing to a television show or like a like a talk show. Like the ability to take something that happened the day before or that morning and present it in front of an audience and have a unique original take, and something that everybody in the room kind of knows or they saw, or you're informing them for the first time. It's just like it's amazing.
And Shawn, that is such an awesome skill set, because I've witnessed you doing that through watching some of your keynotes, where I was just like, "Are you? This just happened. How did you change this last night?" And you're like, "Yes, I did." So walk us through. Like, for the ones who are just like, hey, that's the first time I've heard that. Walk us through deeper about sort of your process of how you implement that, and what is, again, just newsjacking.
So newsjacking is essentially the ability to take something that's current, that's trending, that's hot, and being able to incorporate it within whatever you're doing and have an original hot take around it. The reason why you want to do that is because that's where the eyeballs are, that's where people are looking up, and that's what's garnering attention. And so if you can provide your own original take on something that's trending right now, there's more, obviously more people will be interested in it. And listen, I'm talking about innovation and disruption. I'm telling audiences that you got to be as relevant as possible. So for me to be able to take things that are happening real time and incorporate that into my presentations, I think showcases, part of that relevance. Like, for example, again, I don't know when this is going to be dropping, but the day after the Apple Vision Pro came out,
Yep.
like I included that. One of my best like integrations was when Elon introduced the Cybertruck. Like the next morning, I was there in front of a massive audience. There was like 1,300 people, and I'm doing a 5-minute take on the Cybertruck and what that means and connecting it back to my story. And it just makes it more like, wow, what am I watching? This is real time, because most speakers, what they've done, or most keynotes, they've dialed their story in so many times about them whatever the story that they have, they've done it 100 million times. It's canned. It's not authentic. And it's just, it's just so rehearsed that they're not even in the moment of life. The world is changing so quickly. You gotta be able to be relevant and now. So I want somebody to watch me and be like, holy crap, that is relevant.
Totally.
That is today. And so that's just who I am.
I dig it, Shawn, because I completely agree.
And by the way, it takes a lot of time. And going back to it, I mean, that's what separates the good from the great. You have to put in that extraordinary effort in order to make that happen. It's not easy to make the slides, to make the story, to rehearse the take, to do that. And I'm a psychopath. And so I will do that. And I will do it on the biggest stages, and risk it.
And just for everyone to amplify, I've witnessed this man where I've been part of some of his projects and his keynotes, where mid-keynote, we decide to shoot a take, chop it up, and then reintroduce it into a later portion of his keynote. It's the most insane thing. And so I don't think anyone understood exactly what I said. We have been on a live stream where Shawn wanted to do, in the moment, a quick little snippet, a recording, a pre-roll, shoot it, document it, and then incorporate into that same keynote. And Shawn, that is crazy to do on the same day. That is insanity. But I understand exactly what you mean about the importance that if you're trying to separate yourself, trying to showcase your skill, and more importantly, communicate and engage the audience to a new level. I mean, what other choice do you have?
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I think the audience appreciates surprise, spontaneity.
Yep.
Listen, I am not the best speaker. I am not the most articulate, the most polished speaker. I say ums and likes. I am not perfect, but I'm not there to teach people how to speak. I'm there to deliver a message. I'm there to deliver something that will change their business, change their life, and to talk about what's happening in the moment. So that is my job at the end of the day. And if you want a great speaker, go to somebody that has, they've ran across America and they have that same story baked. Totally. That's not me.
Totally. So after kind of going through this book, I'm kind of curious, what is your favorite chapter, or what is something out of the book that you just love? Like what's your favorite piece out of this book?
My favorite chapter is chapter 2 for a couple different reasons. Obviously, for most people who are watching this or listening to this haven't listened to the book or read the book. But what chapter 2 is all about is this idea of status, the idea of disrupting your own status in order to grow. I talk about, the reason why I love chapter 2 is that I talk about Cardi B, I talk about Jermaine Dupri, I talk about Russell Westbrook, and it's hip hop, it's basketball, and it's this idea that, how do you go from 100 to 0? Everybody wants to scale, they want to grow, they want to go from 0 to 100. They want to get to the next mountaintop. They want to like be on top. But to me, what's most important is, are you able to go to 0? Are you able to go from 100 to 0? Are you able to disrupt yourself? Because there's always the next mountain. And that mountain might be even higher. And
Mhm.
the challenge is that we all want to go up the mountain, but very few of us want to go down the mountain. It makes sense. You've gained expertise, status, seniority, money, prestige. Do you really want to give any of that up? And so to start back from zero is the idea of, trying to disrupt yourself. And the reason why this is my favorite chapter is because this is one of the hardest things for people to do, but to me, it is the most important. I just finished watching this documentary with Arnold, who I was supposed to include in the book. And to me, he's the perfect example of somebody that can go from 100 to 0. He got to 0 to 100 in bodybuilding. He became the GOAT.
Yep.
Then he's like, let me try this acting thing. And he went from 0 and went back to 100. And then he's like, you know what? I've accomplished this. Am I able to look like a joke again? And go into politics and go to 100. Every single time you restart, you embrace the darkness. You have to embrace the darkness. You have to embrace being a joke. But, at the end of the day, that's what life is all about.
Yep.
It's all about like learning and growing and evolving. And I think more people need to hear that.
No, and that story also hit home because whether I imagine for like normal people who are just navigating their jobs, navigating their lives, it just applies 100% to the same thing. Whether it's a new position, a new role.
And listen, you've done that. You've done that a couple times too, right? You went to esports, right? You started a retail sort of clothing line, right? You're now a creator. You're in video. You're in production, right? So it's like you have done that process of 0 to 100 and back down again. So I don't know how. So being I guess a case study around this idea of going from 100 to 0, which you've done.
Yep.
Tell me the battle of that. Tell me how hard it is for somebody to do that.
It's extremely hard. And at one point I realized I think that's just the process. Like, because of technology, because there's so much new activities happening, if you're not like a forever student, if I'm not willing to take that risk on myself, well, then what's the point? And so I've learned, I remember distinctly, clothing store. So I had a clothing store called Room 322, where at the peak of it, everyone, like my nickname was Room 322. Everyone would call me that because that was like my body. That was like what I embodied. I was always selling it. I was always there and things like that. And when unfortunately I had to pack that in, to be honest, the shame I had because I had to close my business and I had my identity tied into it. But when I started to reflect and started to think deeper, I realized that like, well, hey, I have this awesome experience, but more importantly, I'm the vessel that like translates to things. So when I start a new something, when I go into a new space, when I go into a new division, a new industry, I have so much more to bring to the table. And it was to that same extent, the same thing that I learned through my esports, where again, branding myself as an awesome video game player, traveling the world, being experienced in sort of this new emerging space. When I left that, my team went on to go forward. That year went from, kind of doing quite well, of like a few $1,000s, to winning this giant league overnight, making each player roughly $120,000. And I remember that year I was like, just basically had an opportunity cost of about $100,000. I was like, why did I do this? But I started to realize that like it's all kind of stepping stones. It's all part of the game, and literally went from that 100 to 0. And through that, I realized this again, taking that risk, taking that bet, but more importantly, that persistence, keep going, is vital.
100%. And I think, one of the reasons why we don't go from 100 to 0, and you talked about it, is the embarrassment, the shame, the idea that you're going to look like a joke. And we all have that, right? I have that as well. We're always concerned about what other people will say. Our friends, our peers, our family. They're always going to be like, you're going to give this up? Why? Like, it's going so well. Why? So I get that. But the reality is that, and I tweeted this out recently, when it comes to most entrepreneurs, they go through this process of they're like L, and then there's a W. And then they're like, okay, that was good. And then they go LL, and then there's a W. But even though you have all these L's, and maybe you have some W's, your true friends, they don't really care about your L's or W's.
Totally.
They just care about you.
Yep.
And they care about you as a friend. They respect you for who you are, and that's the only thing that matters.
100%.
And we get so caught up with what people will think when at the end of the day, they're not thinking about that.
Nope.
They're just thinking, they just care for you at the end of the day. So I think the opinions of others really hold us back from going from 100 to 0. So how do we stop, caring about that? One of the things that I try to do is I try to remind myself every single day that I'm a speck.
Mm-hmm.
That there's been 192,000 years of human beings. There's there's 8 billion people on the planet. There's billions of people that have lived on this earth. We're a one earth amongst a billion universes. Like, we are just a speck. We don't really matter.
Totally.
And to me, that's inspiring. To me, that's like, you can do whatever you want.
Why not shoot your shot? Like, what?
Yeah,
like
life is short.
I completely agree, Shawn. And like, on that same wavelength, I have realized too many times that we overthink that people care, people are looking, people are judging. And to be honest, especially in today's world where there's so much information and content out there, no one cares. No one's watching you. No one at all. And whether you fail or you win, again, to your point, no one cares.
Like, how many people have you talked to that they're like, oh, like, Bobby, you're like, they'll and they're like a kind of a close friend. Yeah. They're like an acquaintance, and they're like, they're saying something like, oh, you're like, how's that esports thing doing, right? It's like, dude, that was like a decade ago. Yeah. Like, how many times that happened? Right?
Yo, to this day, I will have someone who will randomly ask me a question like, hey, do you still have that clothing store? I'm like, yo, that was a lifetime ago. Yeah. So to that point, Shawn, it's hilarious and it's true. Like, people are just not paying attention, which is totally fine. But that should give you the permission to take that risk, to unfold what you want to accomplish, do what you want to do, and more importantly, experiment and free to fail.
100%. And that idea of experimentation and free to fail is, I think, so important when it comes to innovation and the ability to ultimately disrupt yourself. To me, we have taught kids, we have taught our society around how to be an amazing assembly line, right? We have turned everything into assembly line. We have assembly lines of accountants and marketers. We put our kids into assembly lines. Mm-hmm. We teach people this really standardized, linear way of operating the world, of how to exploit as much as possible, optimize. Mm-hmm. But we haven't taught people how to explore. Mm-hmm. There is how to play, how to experiment. We haven't even taught that yet. Mm-hmm. And so, to me, that's what we need to do more of as human beings if we want to, really fulfill what we want to do in life.
100%. And just to pause on that for a second, how would you how does someone who's listening right now saying, okay, Shawn, that makes a lot of sense. How do I explore? How to explore my day job? How to explain my 9 to 5? How to explore as an entrepreneur or a business owner? Like, what would you say to that individual if they said, how do I explore? How do I experiment?
So, to me, the idea of exploration is not setting aside a time to do that, because the reality is that you're never going to get to it. How many people that are listening to this want to get to the gym? Oh yeah, I carved out that time for the gym. I'm gonna go there, right? I'm gonna carve out that time to meditate. I'm gonna carve out that. Not gonna happen. Mm-hmm. Forget carving out time for exploration. I think your job is exploration. I think that every single thing that is in front of you, every single task, you should be asking the question, can I do this better? Why am I doing this the way that I'm doing this? And every single thing that you're doing, every single day, ask yourself the question, why do I do this? And I actually have a helpful tip, which is I ask myself the question, how do I try to get myself fired today? How do I try to get myself fired today? It's this the idea of taking a very small risk every single day that will not change, that will ultimately change my trajectory, but my organization's trajectory. Mm-hmm. So ask yourself the question, how do I try to get myself fired today? And it's like sending that moonshot email to a client that you've been waiting to send, or it's like having that difficult conversation with a colleague. Like, how do I try to get myself fired every single day? And that will help you explore just a little bit more. Because if you if you ask yourself that question, you wouldn't optimize.
Mhm.
You would ultimately explore. It is the ultimate exploration question.
Oh, Shawn, that is so powerful because, like, I think people don't understand, like, the byproduct of doing so is, like, that opportunity. And I imagine to some extent, you don't mean, like literally kill yourself in like, shooting yourself your own foot of doing that.
No, don't punch somebody in the face.
But ask yourself, could you punch someone in the face in terms of exploring that factor or going to those limits? I remember back in November when I first got a glimpse of, like, ChatGPT.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I immediately, without hesitation, jumped into it to say, like, what is this all about? Let me start tinkering with it. And to be part of that, like, system and that wave as it is now, which is an insane, awesome tool that, let's be blunt, it's going to change everything in terms of the layers of different apps and programs, or people utilizing it to create content, information, to digest stuff, to communicate ideas, to bring stuff to fruition. There are still individuals who are just either don't have that in them to experiment, which I think puts you at a disadvantage. Because obviously when utilizing tools or technology, it's not about just going all in, but it's about integration, testing, experimenting, seeing what works, what doesn't work, and being comfortable in that failure if that happens, or those wins if it goes the other direction.
Yeah, so what's your take? So you've been using some of these generative AI tools. I know you're a tech, geek around some of this stuff. So tell me what your take is around the whole generative AI space.
Ultimately, it's like the best thing in the world, because I think what it's doing, it's allowing people who not necessarily have the skill set, the technical skill set to execute on those ideas, as from photography to videography, all the way down to, like, creating art, to finally have a chance to put together ideas in their head, and they maybe don't have enough time to pursue those skill sets to finally be able to play, finally to be able to execute and bring stuff to fruition. There's a lot of technical people who are, sure, call it the fear and scare that are taking over these jobs. There's also the individuals who are the artists who are also, like, upset that it's taking my concepts, it's taking literally my art and redesigning it. But from my perspective, from the bigger thing, I think it's going to be such an amazing tool for the solo creators to finally kind of have no barriers, no excuses. Like, it has never been easier to create ever in the history of time than right now.
100%.
And there's just no reason why to say there's absolutely nothing.
I 100% agree with you. I agree that this is the next paradigm shift. This is the next exponential tech that we've been waiting for. Yep. And I say this every single time I do a keynote, and I've been doing this since ChatGPT came out. And I newsjacked this because that weekend, ChatGPT, it was December, the first weekend of December. It was, like, coming out. I remember on that Tuesday, I integrated within my keynote, and I said, this is the next thing. And if you are not experimenting with this, if you are not in the mud, then you're going to be left in the dust. And to be honest with you, if you are a professional in a in a white collar job today, if you haven't had the chance to play with this, or you haven't heard of this, I don't know what you're doing. Stop watching this and start doing something with it.
Totally.
And this is going to disrupt every single industry. I'm so confused as to why people are not understanding how massive of an impact this is going to be. I use this thing. I use ChatGPT, Midjourney. I've been using Adobe Generative Fill every single day. Okay, and it's crazy, and it's just starting. We're on day 1, and it's already unbelievable. So every single industry is going to change. Every single white collar job up until now is going to change. It is going to replace jobs.
100%.
It is going to replace jobs, and I don't want to sugarcoat it. It is going to replace jobs. So if you are in a job today that is redundant, that is repetitive, that's mundane, that's mediocre, if you hate it, then the robot will come for you. This is the end of mediocrity. You have to go and find where you can provide value in the world, because this is coming. And I think this is the great democratizer in terms of creativity. This is putting the hands of This is putting creativity in the hands of every single person on the planet. Anything that you ever wanted to visualize, to sell your boss on, to do anything, it's here. Stop. You don't have any excuses anymore. I'm so passionate about this subject. It's crazy.
I have been trying to, again, I use it religiously, daily, since its inception. And what I've learned from it, it's an accelerator for individuals who have ideas and concepts that they want to flush out. If you have experience and knowledge in it, people think that it can be used to, like, if I have no experience or knowledge about a particular topic or subject, they can just dive into it. But it gives you that, like, almost like fluffy, generic answer. But if you're an individual who has a lot of knowledge and experience in a certain area, between a series of prompts or diving deep through a series of, like, inputs, you're able to get to such a great place of unpacking information and acceleration around it. I have done, and I'm sure you've done also, I've done reports, I've done sort of breakdowns and details that has taken me seconds to complete. And the other thing recently that I've been just nerding out is there's individuals who are creating basically through a series of, like, platforms, the opportunities to kind of, like, have them, like, interconnected with different basically texts and apps. So I have this really cool app on my phone that I can record a voice memo, breaking down a situation, breaking down an experience, and then it automatically will run itself through ChatGPT through a transcription. And then also ChatGPT, I've created these prompts that allow it to, like, challenge my thoughts, summarize my thing in bullet points. So that then with a click of a button, by me recording this note,
100%.
it just gives me a detailed breakdown.
Is that Oasis?
And all this stuff. Pardon me?
Is that Oasis?
No, this is a self one, and I can't think of the name of exactly what it is, but it's holy cow.
Anyways, I totally get what you're saying. I'm using something very similar too, which is you speak into it and it's analyzing it. It can turn it into an outline, a transcript, a poem, like anything, and it's super powerful. And I believe that we are entering into the narrator economy. Right? Just the ability to come up with a goal, the ability to just narrate what you're feeling, and you can get all these outputs. And I think we are actually rewiring how we look at organizations. We are rewiring how we look at processes and work. Like I've been saying that the end is now the beginning. Where now, at the beginning of any process, you should get the AI to spit out 100 different variations, and that now that's the beginning point. You actually have the output to start. The end is the beginning, and then you start your creative process, or then you start your innovative process after that. And so this is going to change everything. And one of the things that happens within organizations, we have so much bureaucracy. We have assistant managers and senior managers and AVPs and VPs and senior VPs. We have all this infrastructure. We have all this bureaucracy in order for people to manage the work. But you see, with AI, when the end is now the beginning, when you can get the AI to do all the output, what work are you actually managing? And so we have created all this bureaucracy and all this fat within our organizations because they are there to manage the work. So I can't even start to talk about how this is different than every technology that we've seen. This is a massive game changer. It's going to be 51% unbelievable, and 49% is going to be horrible. There are some downsides to this.
And one industry I want to get your hot take on is the traditional, like, educational, in particular, university. I'm kind of curious, what's your thoughts and opinions on how, especially, as the school year is wrapping up and the new year is going to be starting this fall, what's your take on, like, sort of the university colleges now with this tool that's out there that I believe even through ChatGPT, you could run ChatGPT to prompt it to say, hey, by the way, make sure this passes your own engines of, has this been written by AI? What's your take on that?
So I've been seeing some universities and colleges, some of them ban GPT, ChatGPT and Bard and other things. I believe that that's the dumbest thing that you can do. To me, it's putting this in the hands of everybody and saying, by the way, here's one of the greatest aggregators and tools. How can we use it to fuel creativity at the end of the day? And I think what it's also exposing is the hypocrisy of universities. that we've actually trained people to be mediocre. We've trained people to be in assembly lines, and we're putting out, we're sending kids into the world in this assembly line format. And I think what universities have been amazing for it's been amazing for people to make friends, to learn new ideas, to explore new avenues, to make love, to go to to drink for the first time.
Experiences in life.
That's amazing. I think that we should still continue to do that. Actually, I think we're gonna have kids that actually can develop an interpersonal relationship, learn how to communicate, like get on a podcast and talk for 2, 3, 4 hours. I think that's a massive skill. And so I think what ChatGPT is going to expose is that universities are actually just status signaling, mechanisms. The reason why you go to a really nice school is for the status, so you can have that, so they can go to a nice, institution, a nice firm, and have that on your resume at the end of the day. And so let's many people think about university as the learning. Well, the learning has always it's already been disrupted.
Totally.
You can learn on YouTubes and podcasts, and watching something like this. You're gonna learn more in this book than you're gonna learn in 4 years of school.
100%.
So what is school?
Yeah.
We need to ask the question: what is school? Especially in the world of generative AI.
I think that is such a great and accurate take, because it's not like we're going backwards. It's not like there's like a rewind and a pause, and for them to ban it, it's like, well, how do you ban this? Of course, people could just do it at home or do it in their like dorms or whatever they're doing, and so that's a fascinating take. So to jump ahead onto something that's new, as you brought up earlier about that Vision Pro, this I'm kind of curious what was going through your head when you saw that, and you could just share with the people who don't fully know about Apple's newest almost medium that they're trying to develop.
Yeah, so Apple's introduced the Vision Pro, which is they did something very savvy within their sort of a developer keynote, where they didn't say the word AI once. They didn't say the word metaverse once, because they didn't want to put themselves in any of those camps.
Yep.
But really, this is a mixed reality spatial computing platform that you just put on your face.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is. I haven't used it yet, so my take is very primitive.
Yep.
But I have read all of the reviews and seeing what people are saying about
Likewise.
it, and many people have said that it is actually phenomenal. People that you can trust, guys like Ben Thompson, Marques Brownlee. They've said how amazing it is. And it's going to be really interesting to see where this goes and where this develops.
Mm-hmm.
I think the same thing happened with the iPod or the iPad or the iPhone. At the initial, when it started, we're like, yeah, but where are the use cases?
Yeah, where's the keyboard? Like why would I need this? I have a computer.
So for me, I think I've been thinking a lot. What is the use case?
Yeah.
And I think for Vision Pro, I think what Apple is really trying to do is that they really want this to be something that you use at home. So cross between work and entertainment at the end of the day. I don't see people wearing this outside of work
Just hanging
yet.
on the bus.
I don't see that yet. I don't think they built it for that kind of experience. And so this is really kind of like a home thing. And then the price point is interesting too, because it's $3,500 US. And that's a huge price point. So if you look at traditional organizations, I mean, they can't even get a MacBook into their organization, let alone a Apple Vision Pro. So the enterprise adoption of this, although I can definitely see the opportunity of including Apple Vision Pro for training, for folks that are in very risky positions. Like I can just see people fucking doing their Excel spreadsheets in Apple Vision Pro, but it needs to be cheaper, right? Because the reality is that enterprises won't invest in this.
Totally.
Otherwise, they would have got MacBooks by now. I go everywhere. People still don't have MacBooks because their IT firms don't have the money for it. So, yeah, it's really interesting. What was your original take, seeing?
You know what? I think a lot to what you just said is around entertainment. Like, I'm sure the gaming that's going to come out that's going to be quite immersive. Clearly, the movie experience and the consumption is going to be quite also interesting. Where I'm intrigued is what will this do in terms of like now the new layer of like content creation. You know, as much as you're right, I also believe that people are not going to be wearing this on the public, but I think there's going to be a series of individuals who are going to push it out in public to kind of document all of these experiences and build up even to that resume or rapport of that information to share of those like kind of different different experiences. You know, end of the day, like let's be blunt, like Apple is such like is considered like a premium product of like their price point,
100%,
and in that they carry such authority that once when they open the doors, and that's when everyone else is going to start to invest into this space of augmented reality and things like that, even though it's been done and it's been played. And so I'm looking forward to seeing the spin-offs of devices and other groups, whether it's like Snapchat or other individuals onto that platform. But more importantly, I'm also excited for some of the developers who are going to be producing so much more items in it. End of the day, I was excited. Like,
to me,
I'm an Apple fanboy.
To me, I'm the same. I'm excited. I'm excited about people that are willing to take shots. I'm excited for companies that are willing to take big bets. That's why I see a lot of people, they complain about, you know, Mark Zuckerberg or Meta and what they've been doing with their products, with Quest and whatnot. Like, I actually applaud them. I applaud
100%.
people that are trying to disrupt and try something new, and change the course of technology and history. Like, so to me, I applaud that. And yet everyone will, you know, have their take of. Maybe I'm an optimist.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the innovators that are, you know, trying to make our lives better.
100%. Because like it's funny to go back to the book. I mean, when you layer out in the past some of those like historians, those individuals, those people who took those risks, who've made those things, like we'd be nowhere today without them, without that framework, without those mindsets, without those people practicing and taking those steps. And it's crazy to think of like a world of not individuals who are willing to take those risks.
And the reality is that everybody that has become a bold one, every single person that has actually put a dent in the universe, they have all gone through this fight. They all had to embrace this darkness for years until you know, the world sort of recognized who they were and they recognized their talents, and you know, their innovations were able to, you know, excel in the world. And so that's why I always embrace people that are trying to do something differently, because I know how hard it is. I know the pain that you have to endure to be an innovator. One of the things that I talk about in my keynotes is this idea of embrace the darkness. It's like the darkness is not your enemy, it is your friend. It is where you find your limits at the end of the day. And if you want to be an innovator, you have to be able to go through this period where you look like a joke, where you have to suffer. And I ask the question, are you willing to have the longest view in the room? Are you willing to suffer? Because that's what it takes to be an innovator.
100%.
There are anomalies. There are anomalies throughout history where you know, out of the gate, you create something. But for 99.99% of the people, you got to be like, you know, James Dyson, 5,000 prototypes for 15 years, and then you make it. You got to be like Mr. Beast, hundreds of videos with nobody watching it until you become the biggest YouTuber of all time. You have to embrace the darkness.
And that is such an important piece, because sometimes when people hear the stories, they always hear the success, and they don't understand that those people have a roadmap of just being uncomfortable, of failures, of being in a hard place. And it's not just, again, the hits, the wins around that.
So I'm going to ask you a question. What is something that you believe in that no one believes in yet? Or what is something that you believe in where even your close friends like would disagree with you, or people that you admire?
No, that's a good question. You know what? It's again, one of the cliche things that I'm a fanatic about, and it's what we've been discussing in the bigger picture, is this using content as a tool. My friends and the people around me, even in a day and age like now, don't believe that's true. Like they understand.
Unpack that. What do you mean?
So I think people understand the value of content because they see it everywhere. They see these like, you know, these YouTubers, these individuals climb and hit certain trajectories, but I don't think they actually believe it's possible. And it's a weird conundrum. I have so many conversations with individuals who are doing great work, whether if they're building out series, and they're going to know who I'm speaking to. Well, I'm not going to name names, but whether they're building out series of installations, whether if they're creating documentaries, Mosey, or even to if they're accelerating a new space, emerging space, a cannabis space in places. I've said to them that through the work that they're doing, if you just showed your work, you documented some of your stuff or what you're thinking behind, you would see an acceleration in the work that you do because people don't know what you do. And we are part of that world that seeing is believing. Like that cliche, like if it's on the ground, it doesn't exist. It's relatively kind of true. Like I'm a believer that perception is reality. And it goes both ways, which is sometimes a bad, negative thing, but it also goes in a positive thing. And in a world that perception is reality, if I have no presence, if I have no brand out there through my content, through my stories, then to be honest, do I exist? And that's
Right.
like, obviously you do exist. But to many, you don't. To the majority, you don't. And I have believed, and speaking to sort of like technology, one of the things that I'm quite avid about is if you can use technology to its fullest by continuously testing, experimenting, documenting, and sort of storytelling and keeping that content, keep that information to use, I think there's like a bigger play out of this where, as you mentioned that you have 2 children, I'm a new father, and so I have a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old. And I think that this is the first time in history that we can build legacy, that like my son can see what I did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, through the stuff that I've documented, through the stories I've told, by actually me keeping this information. And one of the newest projects that I've done that I've been sharing with a few people is I've been building out a legacy project where I've been interviewing my father and diving deep in the story in like a podcast setting where I'm filming it, asking him questions. And what I'm doing is I'm creating like quite a lengthy capsule because I want to start, so to speak, my family's lineage, the history behind it. And it's going to start with this because I have, yes, these tools, but more importantly, because of technology, I have that time. I have that opportunity.
Yeah. You know, I love that, and I love the idea of legacy. I say this to my friends all the time that, especially as being somebody that's a little bit more public, my kids and my kids' kids are literally watching me in 4K. They're literally watching my moves in 4K. And whether it's watch through YouTube or podcasts or whatever else, they are seeing how I'm moving. And so if that's not the biggest like motivator in the world to be like, you know, somebody, your kids could be like, what was that doing in that era, in that 2020 era? Like, what was he up to in that era? What happened there?
What was his mindset like? What was his beliefs? What did he care about?
Exactly. And we never had that. I wish I had that with my father, right? I wish I had that with my mother, to understand what their mindset was. And so that it could help me, you know, reflect on my decisions. But now, for the first time in history, our kids are watching us, and they can watch us.
Yep.
And it's incredible.
And to that, like to your point, your grandchildren, your great-great-grandchildren, your great-great-great-grandchildren right now are watching you and consuming. It's like, that's where I got that quirk from. That's where I got that interest from. That's where I got that discipline from. That's where I got that interest in technology or speaking or engaging. And I think that's powerful.
And think about it like, you know, somebody like your great, you know, granddaughter is going to clip out this particular piece and be like, you know, oh, my great-great-grandfather was talking to this guy, Shawn Kanungo. He said, embrace the darkness. And I like that. And she's going to like present on it. So totally. It's wild.
It's a crazy thought. So through your talk, Shawn, and through you speaking to all of these groups from like corporate culture to Fortune 500 companies, I'm kind of curious, what does that landscape look like in terms of sort of how fast are they moving around it? And for small business owners, entrepreneurs, and kind of people who sometimes feel like they can't keep up for the big tech, big company. I'm wondering if you can give them some insights of how fast they're moving or how slow they're moving.
On what piece?
On almost like, call it that pursuit, because as you said before, you're a strong believer that like the power shift is going to the individuals versus the big corporate companies. Currently, as you're traveling and having those keynotes and meeting and talking to all these corporate groups, I'm wondering, is that still the case, or is there an acceleration in that case currently right now because of tech?
I think it's still one. I think it's still a. I asked you the question, what is one truth that you believe in that no one believes in yet? I believe that this is still hidden, right? This is still a secret that no one knows yet. That the most powerful entity in the world is the individual, and I don't think institutions have figured it out. Some of them have. They've seen the power of creators. They've seen, that's why, some of these, like I mentioned, Messi before, and that deal. That's an example of something like that. But we're starting to see it. And I think over the next decade, one of the biggest questions that organizations are going to have is like, how do we compensate? How do we manage somebody that is actually building their own brand, their own equity, and be able to have them within our organization? Very similar to what the NBA is probably going to go through. LeBron started this player empowerment movement, and you've seen that cascade to almost all the stars in the NBA, where they have so much clout and power, and in a sense, at some point, they might want equity, right? And that is going to happen with many organizations, not only media, not only sports, but like accounting firms and consulting firms and marketing firms, right? And so this is going to be a really interesting conversation, and the fuel is really around it's really on content, to be honest with you. And that content is power. Content is luck. What do I mean by luck? When you put a piece of asset out, whether it's a text, a video, an audio, you have no idea where that's going to go. That could hit somebody that, let's say 5 people watch it. That could create a connection that you didn't have before. That could create an opportunity that you've never seen before. Content creates luck. And that's power at the end. And so I think organizations are going to start to see it. You're already seeing it in the media realm. That's why a lot of journalists are starting up their own Substacks and whatnot. But it's going to come to every single industry. It's probably going to take a decade to get there, but I think they're slow to adopt.
Shawn, I could talk to you for another 2 hours if given the time, but I want to respect your time, and I want to say first off, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us where can people get the book from? Where is it located? And tell us those details.
So first of all, before I get into this is not important. First of all, let me tell you this. I'm humbled and honored to be here. Like truly, truly, truly. I don't think that there are that many people on this planet that put the love and the time and the production value and have the aesthetics and the design into putting something together like this. This is, you know what this is? This is love. This is love. This is, and that's why when you asked me to come on here, I'm like, I know that you were doing this out of the love of producing something great. And I was excited to come on here. Okay. And so with that, I want you to rate, review, subscribe, whatever you got to do on this channel, because this person is giving you love. So give him love back.
Respect that, Shawn.
And after that, pick up the Bold Ones chapters, Amazon, wherever you can get the book.
Shawn, again, thank you for those kind words. And everyone, I'm telling you, this book is so fascinating. It dives deep into some great stories, some tactical advice, practical things you could do. Shawn, thank you so much for coming in. I think you have a wealth of information, wealth of content. You're an amazing individual, and I'm looking forward to the next time.
Yes, let's do it again. Thank you so much, Bobby.
Thanks.
Thank you.